Hello guys, so welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be discussing one of the most important components that are used in Fyne, and these are the Fyne collections. So we have three main collections. We have the list collection, and we also have the table collection, and then finally we have the tree collection. So these two have something in common, and the common thing is that these two have three main callbacks, and these callbacks are important because they help us in defining how our data is going to be defined, is going to be displayed. So in the list and the table component, the first callback, we have the length callback, which returns the number of items in the data. Then we have the CreateCell callback, which is used to define a template, or basically is to define a label which should be updated later. And then we have the UpdateCell callback, which is used to update the label that we have created. So we can get started by defining how our collections are going to be. So we can run this simple application and see how it looks like, and then we can update it so that it can contain what we want. So this is how it looks like. So I want to add three tabs. One tab for list, one tab for table, and one tab for tree. So here I'm going to just say these tabs. We can also change this, the tabs holder, and then we say container dot new tab up, and then we're going to have our items. I can just get rid of all of these. So I'm going to have my container dot new tab item. I'm going to call this list. Then I'm going to define a widget here, widget dot new label, and then I'm going to call this list. And then I can add, just copy this, and then I call this table. Then I change this to table as well. And then the last one, we have tree. So for the case of using a tree, we're going to have we have four main callbacks, and it's going to discuss them much later on. So you can just change these two tabs. And then let's see how it looks like. Yeah, so this is how our application is going to look. We have a table, we have a tree. Now we can start adding our independent elements. So this is how we're going to define our table. The first thing, we're going to need our data. So we're going to destroy a list of fruits, a list of anything. For in our case, we're going to use fruits. So you can just say the list data. Then we're going to define a list of strings. And then we're going to say maybe apple, banana, maybe oranges. You can also add maybe cherry, and maybe date. You can just stop up there. This is going to be our data, and then we're going to define our list here. So we're going to have a list. Of course, a list is going to be a widget, widget.new list, new list, and then we're going to define our list. So based on this, we can see that for the list we have a length function, we have a create item function, we have an update item function. So those are the callbacks I was telling you about. So the first item, of course, we're going to have a function that's going to be for creating the length callback, and of course here we're going to return the length. We're going to return the length of the list data item. So this is what we call the length callback. And then the next callback, we're going to get the create item callback. Of course, we're going to have another function. It's going to a canvas object, and then we're going to return the widget, widget.new label. We can just call this template. And finally we are going to add the update item, because we can add that. And then we have our I, because we can just change this to I for simplicity. And then this one we can just call this an object obj, because this one is for updating this label here. Then we're going to have obj widget dot label. Let me update this set text to list data I. So this is how we define our list. Display it here. Let's see how it looks like. Yeah, so that's how we define our list. So we can add a click handler so that when it clicks we can display it. So we can come here and say we can define another maybe list, clicked list. No, we can just say maybe selected items. Let's click a new widget dot new label. Then we say no item selected. And then we can come down here and add some handlers to this list, so that you can say list dot unselected. We're going to return a function, of course, with an ID. This ID is of course is the widget dot list item ID, and then we're going to say selected items dot set text to their list data and then the ID. Then we can come and display it alongside this. So you can just cut that, and then we say container dot new hbox, going to have a list and then our selected items. Then we can run this and see how it looks like. Oh, it should be ID, not I. It should be ID. Yes, good. Then you can see how it looks like. So this is how you define your list item. We have the length callback for returning the items, and then we have the create item for defining where we're going to be adding our data. This one, then we have the update callback for updating that data. So you can see that if I select Apple, Apple is selected, and so on. Now we can go to the table and see how we define our table. So table is not so much different to this. That is the callbacks. So we can define our table here and say table going to be widget dot new table. So we want the same things as this. As you can see here, we have the length callback. We have the length callback, of course, the rows and the columns, because it's a table. We have the create item callback, and then we have the update item callback. So we need to have this data. Just like we define our data here, we can just define our data here. So we can say maybe user data is going to be given by, since we have rows and columns, we're going to have it like this. And then we are going to add, of course, it's going to be a string. And the reason we're using this is because it's string for the purpose of rows and columns. So we're going to add our items. I can add the first, maybe the first person. I can say Alice, and then maybe Alice at example.com. That is the name of the Alice, her email address, and maybe her password. Maybe password 1234. So we can add the second person, and you can say Ben. You can just change this to Ben. Then we have maybe Ben 1 2 3 4. Then we can have a last one, maybe Peter. You can add Peter, and then we'll come here and say Peter, and then we have Peter here, Peter 1 2 3 4. So we can use this our data. So let's first define our length callback. Of course, we're going to have a function of that. We're going to return the int rows and columns, and then we're going to have we're going to say return length. Oh, sorry, it should be length of user data, length of user data. But then since we have rows, of course, we're going to return the rows that of the data itself, but we also have a column, so we should add +1, and then we have 3. Okay. Oh, sorry. Return. So we're going to return the rows plus column, and then the number of rows that we have. The number of columns, of course, it's 3 1 2 3. And then we're going to define the create item. The create item, which is going to return the widget itself as we had done earlier. So it's going to be return widget.new label. I'll just call it template, and then we're going to come back to the create for the create item. So in our case here, we can just the update callback, update cell callback. Then of course this one we're going to just call it obj. So in this case, when we're updating this template here, we also need to update the columns as well. So we should also have a label which is going to be obj dot widget dot label. I have to update the column first. Update dot row. If row equals to 0, of course that's going to be for the column. We're going to say we're going to add our headers. Our headers is going to be a string. Of course, you're going to have the username, because we have 3 headers according to our data here. Username, and then we have email, then we have the password. Okay, then we have to update this label. We have to update this template. So we're going to say label dot set text to headers, and then we have to locate them. id dot column, id dot column, id dot column, and then we want to add some styles. So that text style is equals to Fyne dot text style, and then we're going to bold. We're going to say it's going to be true. Okay, so we have added our headers. So if it's not 0, we're going to say else, because it's the actual data. We're going to say label dot set text to user data, the actual data, id dot row -1, of course the first one, and then id dot column. Then we're going to do that. So we have successfully defined our table. So we can add our table here. Let's add it so that you can see how it looks like. Let's add it and see how it looks like. We can run it. So these collections are important because you can use them to display any kind of data that you want. So we can see our table, but we have a problem here. As you can see, username is fine, the email is fine, the password is fine, but you can define, increase the column size. So we're going to say table dot set column width. The first column width, we can set it at maybe 120, and then we can, the second one, we can increase it. So we can have the first one at 200, because that one is for the email. And then for the password one, we can have it at maybe 150. Then we see how it looks like. Okay. Let's see how it looks like. Yeah, this looks better. So that's how you define tables in your Fyne app. So we can now look at how we're going to define trees. Trees are somehow complex, but they're used to display much more data. And in trees, one thing you should know is that we have the root nodes and we have the children nodes. So these collapsible items, normally you can use a tree to display it. And in trees, we have four callbacks. We have the ChildUIDs callback, which is used to get the children. If a given root node has a children, can get it using the ChildUIDs. And then we have the IsBranch callback. Now this callback is used to check if a root node has a branch. And then we have the create node, similar to the tree and list, used to creating a template or defining a new label. And then we have the update node, which is used to update the data in the defined node. So we can start defining our tree. We can of course start defining our data first. We can just define it, say tree widget dot new tree, and then we can define our data. So we can come and say data equals to map. It's going to be a map item. It is going to be a string. Then you're going to have another string there. Then you're going to start defining our data. So this one, the first item in a tree, is normally called the root node. So we can say maybe fruits, and then we have maybe vegetables. This is what we are calling the root node. Now, after defining the root node, now you can start defining the children of the root nodes. So you can have maybe apple, banana, and then we also have oranges. Then you also need for vegetables. Then we have maybe carrots, and then we can have maybe broccoli, and then we have spinach, and so on. But as far as I'm going to stop that, so in this case, these are the root nodes, fruits and vegetables, and then when fruits is clicked, it's going to collapse to display apple, bananas, and oranges, and then vegetables is clicked, it's going to display carrot and that one. So now we can start defining our functions here. So for the first one, you're going to have the child UID, you can have the func, then you're going to return an ID, and then we don't need this for now. It's going to have a function of an ID, which is going to be a string. It's going to be a string. Going to return a list of strings. And then it's going to return the data we just defined with the ID itself. So this is the child UID. which is the ChildUIDs. Going to return that. For the new tree, wait, have I done wrong? This frame. Okay, let's proceed. And then we're going to define now the IsBranch callback. You can just add a func. Of course, we're going to return a callback. We're going to have an ID, which is going to be a string. In that case, we're just going to use a string. But of course, you can decide to leave it like that. It's going to return a boolean. So you're going to have a return. Then we're going to get at the length of the data ID. If it's greater than 0, then it means that it has a branch, otherwise it doesn't have a branch. Then the next thing we're going to return is the create node for branches. Because B is for branch, you can just do this. It's a branch. If there's a branch, then we're going to return this. We're going to define our widgets where the data is going to be updated. So we're going to define a new label and just call it templates. And then finally, now we're going to update our data. So we're going to return the update node. You can have an ID, because ID is as a string. And then B is for branch of boolean, and then here CO, which you can call it obj, and for object. Then we're going to say obj. We're going to update this label here with our actual data. We have a widget.label. Then of course we're going to set text to ID. And set the text to ID. So we have our tree. We can just come and add it here and see how it looks like. We have our tree there. Then let's come and see how it looks like. You can run this. And then we have a table, we have our tree. So when you click on that, it's collapsible. So this is how you define your tree. We have a tree of fruits and we have a tree of vegetable. You can add a click event here on the tree. So you can just come and say tree.onSelected. Unselected, of course, it's going to be a function of an ID, which is going to be a string. And then we're going to maybe display it down here. Of course, you can choose to display it on the other side. Print ln maybe. We can say maybe selected node, another space there, and then we say ID. Or maybe we can just come here and say selected tree, selected node, so that you can display it side by side. And then you can say widget dot new label. No node is selected. And then we can come here and say, selected node dot set text to ID, so that you can be able to view them side by side. And then we're going to come down here to the tree. We're going to use container, insert new hbox. You can say tree and then selected node. As simple as that. Then we can do that, and then we run the app so that we can see how it looks like. So I come back to the tree, and then we come down here, fruits is selected, then you can say that. Okay. Yeah, so that's how we implement this. So those are three most important. You can see this, you can use this one as a dashboard for your side elements. So that's how you define your list. This is how you define your table. You can add event listeners, and this is how you define your tree. So we can stop there for now, and thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video.